It's Sunday morning here at CBS News in Washington. I'm Kaylee Hartung with Kelly Evans in the green room for Face the Nation. Kelly, fresh off the set of Face the Nation, all because Bob wanted to talk to you about your experience in Myrtle Beach, moderating
Monday night
the debate down there. How do you, when Bob was first chatting with you, he said, you know, what was it like? Was it like the Coliseum? I mean, how do you describe that experience?
It was pretty amazing, and it would have been one thing if it were just a random crowd, but this was a South Carolina GOP event. They had rallied people for it, they had filled the crowd, and for several minutes before we even came out, they were going through warm-up exercises, someone was singing the Star Spangled Banner, and we all walk out like one-on-one being announced. I mean, it literally was being like it's some sort of sports event. So there was this crackling energy in the room even before the debate began, and I kept sort of shouting in my mic to ask the questions, thinking no one could hear me, but of course they could. And I realized that upon watching it.
Did you recognize at the time how big a part the audience was playing in the whole scheme of things?
No, and I think last week was a bit of a turning point for that, because both in the first debate in South Carolina that we did, and then later in the CNN debate, we saw them being unusually sort of involved and boisterous. Maybe it's something about South Carolina. You know, the next couple of debates are in Florida. We'll see if it's the same. But there were standing ovations for Newt Gingrich, I think, for the first time, partly, again, because he used the moment quite effectively. But what was hard was the moments when you felt like that energy was kind of being channeled in a less encouraging way. So when they were starting to boo questions that Juan Williams, my colleague from Fox News, was asking about immigration and about Newt Gingrich's comments about race and about minorities, and that's when we've started to see the fallout later in the week with the Daily Show, the Colbert Report, and even just people generally picking up on the behavior of the audience and wondering if it was revealing some sort of racial bias within South Carolina or the GOP. And this is, again, it becomes an issue for the Republican Party to deal with.
Everyone's talked about this week Newt Gingrich's, his performance in your debate, in the CNN debate. What did you notice most about him that struck you that night?
He is great, and I think his effectiveness in the debates is only highlighted the more by Mitt Romney's ineffectiveness. So if you only have to wonder, for example, how Mitt Romney or how Newt Gingrich might have addressed the whole question about his tax records and that sort of thing if the questions were fielded to him and not Mitt Romney, because it wasn't that the two issues they were facing were that different. It was just that their response was so different. Romney's was more stuttering, more halting, less sure of himself, and Gingrich was precisely the opposite, and that won the crowd around. So it'll just be interesting now that Newt Gingrich is almost a front runner, now that he doesn't really have the media to direct his vitriol towards. He's really good at using the media in that way, but it's kind of a farce. I mean, we all know that if his ex-wife were to upload the video of herself talking to YouTube and everyone was to tweet and blog about it, he'd still have to find someone to blame for that. And so it's not, the intermediation of the media is not what it seems, I think. And so again, being in a front runner position, will he be able to be as effective in these debates? Will he have the media to blame? And his relationships, by the way, when he's not up there in the middle of his speeches and wagging his finger at people with the media, are much more congenial. And whether it was Brett Baer and Juan on Monday night, or whether it was Bob Schieffer this morning where he says, Bob, you're a very astute political analyst, you tell me what you think. And it's like, well, isn't this the guy who hates the media and thinks they're evil? So again, I think, at least to me, I would hope people sort of get that the media is almost a prop for him to use, and can he be as effective when he doesn't really have that going?
Okay, talk me through this. You've got Brett Baer and Juan Williams from Fox. You've got Jerry Seib, the bureau chief for the Wall Street Journal, here in Washington. How did the Wall Street Journal decide on Kelly Evans?
I think, we've done so much over the last couple of years at the Journal to really be ahead of the curve when it comes to video content, and so we have thousands and thousands of people watching our live programming on WSJ every day, and so I helm the morning show, and I've done a lot of different stuff for the Journal, because this is all in addition, of course, to what I do every day, which is I write a daily column. It's called Ahead of the Tape, and it's basically just a look or review at what's coming up in the economy, trends in the stock market, fixed income, just across the board. Sometimes it's company specific, related to earnings news. It covers a wide range of things, and so it was helpful, I think, in one sense, to have someone up there who kind of came with a business market focus to ask candidates about some of these issues, which are extremely important, and at the same time, someone, because I have a lot of experience on camera and doing video stuff, I felt pretty comfortable about it, and I think they saw it as an opportunity to promote my association with so much of the video content. Say, look, if you want more if you want to find out more who is this person. We have this
Watch
thing.
the
It's
News
called
Hub
the
at
News Hub.
8:30 a.m.
Yeah.
every day on WSJ.com.
So I think that had a lot to do with it.
Moderating a debate is such a unique experience as a journalist. What did you do to prepare? Who did you reach out to for advice?
Everyone. It's a classic example of over-preparing, but that's fine because, you know, preparation is important and it's useful, even if you only end up asking 5 or 6 questions. So it was really, for me, especially coming from more of, you know, I'm coming from New York, I have a business market, almost global focus, and you really have to kind of get in the nitty-gritty of some of the social and foreign policy issues that are going to come up so that you're in a position to react to them during the debate. And, you know, the questions are planned out to make sure we're covering every possible area that we can squeeze into that 90-minute format, but you also want that time to be able to follow up. And what was frustrating for me is that, you know, you'd like to follow up not just once, but 2 or 3 times with every question to say, wait, but you didn't answer that. Or, you know, if I asked you, you know, Governor Romney about bailouts and didn't quite get an answer, you want to jump in and respond, but if everyone does that, you'll never have time for anything.
There are time limits.
And that was frustrating. So for me, given that every day I'm up there on the News Hub show that we do in a totally spontaneous, pretty wide-ranging environment, to have to be very narrow and specific and on point and not able to react quite as much as I would have liked was a little constraining.
How will you watch debates differently now that you've been in that chair?
And I think it's not just me, even I think a lot of people have started to watch debates as much with an eye towards the questions asked and the media involvement as much as they are the candidates. So people have gotten more sophisticated in that way. They're not just ignoring the questions and looking at the responses. They're thinking quite carefully about what do the questions themselves reveal? What is revealed by the way that these are asked and the issues that are important to people? So it's actually, I think, put a lot more pressure on the moderators to some degree. So I have pretty high standards myself. I don't know if I lived up to my own standards the other night, I hope so, but I watch a lot the way that people select the questions, how much they allow for follow-ups or not allow for follow-ups, and just generally whether they focus on the race or on the issues. And I was an advocate for focusing on the issues and asking questions about housing and, you know, the economy and all of these things, and not so much focusing on the horse race aspect of this whole thing and the way that candidates campaign against each other, because I think it's part of the reality of how these things go. But they're important, and those kinds of questions often create the most lasting and quotable moments of the night, whereas when you get into policy issues, it's like a big rambling dodge that always goes back to the candidates' platforms, and that can be a bit frustrating.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.